Oh mein Gott, wie stark das aussieht. Ey, und wir haben alles gesehen, wie es aufgebaut wurde. Was eine geile Reise. Wir probieren mal wieder was Neues. Und das ist immer ein bisschen gruselig, weil man nie weiß, wie es ankommt. Aber schnappt euch ein Käffchen und willkommen zum...
Es ist Reaction Saturday, es ist Reaction Saturday, es ist Reaction Saturday. Was schauen wir uns heute an?
Es ist mal wieder soweit, Freunde. Wir haben uns wieder an einem Samstag hier versammelt, um auf etwas Neues zu reagieren. Und es ist heute kein Speedrun. Und das ist gruselig, weil das ändert jetzt also ein bisschen das Format. Aber ich dachte, ich probiere das Ganze einfach mal und wir schauen einfach gemeinsam am Ende des Tages, ob uns das Ganze gefällt oder nicht. Ich habe ein Video von einem Zuschauer auf Instagram geschickt bekommen. Und ich dachte mir so, ja, da will jemand nun mal wieder den Reaction Saturday sozusagen ein bisschen wiederbeleben. Passt schon, Digga. Und dann bin ich auf das Video draufgegangen und nach 2 Minuten dachte ich mir, holy shit, das ist übel spannend anzuschauen. Komm, probieren wir das Ganze. Deshalb schauen wir uns heute gemeinsam an, wie jemand die komplette Breath of the Wild Map in Zelda nachbaut. Aber wirklich mit allen Details. Alles, was ihr wissen müsst, wird er euch gleich selber erzählen. Natürlich kann ich nicht so durchquatschen wie in den alten Reactions, aber wir schauen rein. Glaubt mir, es macht so Spaß, das anzuschauen. Das Video ist von lieben Grassy. Der Dude hat mit diesem Video, glaube ich, knapp 15.000 Abonnenten gemacht. Also das Ding geht gerade viral auf YouTube. Vielleicht habt ihr es auch schon gesehen. Und wir schauen da jetzt einfach mal rein, denn das ist wirklich so gut gemacht.
Many years that I've been playing Minecraft, I've almost exclusively played in survival mode, never really building much in creative. But for quite a while now, I've been getting the itch to test my skills and do some sort of mega build in creative mode with tools like World Edit. So why not build the entire Breath of the Wild map?
Ja, ganz normaler Gedankengang, ne? Ich hoffe, dass ihr mit dem Englischen klarkommt, ne? Also, das ist natürlich ein bisschen wichtig, aber alles Wichtige, was es für euch zu wissen gibt, werde ich euch zusammenfassen, sollte euer Englisch natürlich nicht so gut sein.
You heard me right. Okay, so before we get into building all of Hyrule in Minecraft, there are a few things that we need to go over. Now, I'm sure you've seen people recreate the Breath of the Wild map before, such as Alask Does Games, who made the map using World Painter. But the difference is, I'm going through the map and adding everything. I'll be building Hyrule Castle, the Guardians, the Divine Beasts, even all the random ruins spread throughout Hyrule. I'm building everything.
Und das ist so geil.
Obviously though, I can't do this all in one video. This will be a multi-part series, each episode covering a different region of the map.
Richtig, das ist auch noch wichtig zu erwähnen, das Ganze ist jetzt nur Part 1, er macht das jetzt gerade live und sollte euch diese Reaction hier gefallen und sollte euch das Ganze hier taugen, ne? Und er sollte irgendwann in Zukunft Part 2, 3 oder 4 raushauen, werden wir das natürlich auch uns hier gemeinsam anschauen. Aber wie gesagt, wichtig ist jetzt vor allem Feedback von euch, ob wir das hier in Zukunft häufiger machen sollen. Und falls ja, könnt ihr den Kanal gerne abonnieren, denn dann kriegt ihr auch Part 2 in eure Abo-Box. Ja.
In today's episode, we will be focusing on the Great Plateau, and, of course, making the actual map to build on. And one final note before we get into it, I already know that people will be asking for a world download. I've always kind of been on the fence about doing world downloads for my builds, but if I do decide to do one, it will not be until the project is fully complete. Now, we have a lot of builds.
By the way, kurzer Funfact, hinter ihm, rechts, wieder rechts-links-Fläche kickt, der Lego Millennium Falcon. Aber ich glaube, das ist nicht der UCS One. Ich glaube, der UCS ist deutlich größer. Aber sehr schön. Also, wenn jemand Lego in seinem Zimmer stehen hat, direkt sympathisch.
Building to cover in this episode, so let's get started. Alright, first things first, how are we going to get the full map into Minecraft?
Wie
Am I
kriegt ihr
really
die
going
Map
to
hin?
terraform the whole thing myself? Well, no. There's actually a really nifty software called World Painter, which allows you to, well, paint your own world using...
Das ist so krass, ne? Das ist eine Sache, die ich auch hier zum ersten Mal gesehen habe. Und ich habe jetzt noch ungefähr 30 Sekunden vom Video gesehen. Danach weiß ich nichts mehr. Aber es gibt halt wirklich ein Tool, mit dem du wie in MS Paint einfach malen kannst. Aber das Ganze wird dann in-game wirklich in Blöcken umgesetzt. Du kannst da, wie gesagt, die Art der Blöcke machen. Du kannst auch die Höhe einstellen. Ultra crazy. Noch nie gesehen, dieses Tool.
the various tools it provides. I planned to use this to make the map, but when I was tutoring around the software, I noticed this button, Import from Height Map. Would it really be that easy to make the map? Well, pretty much. I searched up a height map on Google and I just picked the first one I found and I tried to import it into the software and it worked. As you can see here, the map turned out pretty cool and I was kind of looking around it for the first time and you can already make out some of the distinctive features of the Breath of the Wild map. But
Wie krank einfach, oder? Es gibt einfach eine Höhenmap von Breath of the Wild im Internet. Die kann man einfach in dieses Programm laden und damit hat man quasi schon die Grundfläche für eine Breath of the Wild Map in Minecraft. Software kann so geil
it
sein.
wasn't perfect and I would have to edit the terrain a little bit, most notably the water levels as they were way off what they should be. And here it is, you can see it when I'm fully zoomed
Crazy,
out.
oder?
It actually looks so cool. I quickly opened this very bare bones map with nothing done to it just to see what the terrain looked like. This is Death Mountain? Oh
Naja, der Todesberg ist ein bisschen eingefroren.
my god! I think this is the island the castle's supposed to be on. This is the island the castle would be on, it just feels really far north. This is definitely the Gerudo Highlands. I think this is the
wie
Yiga
cool.
Clan entrance, and then that's the tower.
Es ist halt
with the
alles noch
giant chasm,
geflutet.
And eventually it should just cut off.
Alle Flat Earthler, alle, die denken, die Erde ist eine Scheibe, die wissen ganz genau, so sieht das Ende der Welt aus.
I found the edge of the map. I messed around with the scale of the map a little bit before I imported a new map with the sea level as low as it could go so that you could actually see the map.
Whoa.
And so I got to work on fixing and polishing the map so that it was ready to be built upon. Okay, so I'm gonna try to go through these early bits pretty fast because I don't think they're that entertaining and we still have a lot to get to. The first thing I wanted to do with the map was get the water level right and put in all the little lakes and ponds around the map. I started down by Eventide Island because I could use the shape of the island and kind of like compare the shorelines from the Minecraft map to the actual map to see if the water level was at the right place. Then I moved up kind of into the Lanayru and Farron region to put it.
Boah, was eine Fleißarbeit. Der muss jetzt einfach überall das Wasser reinsetzen. Und das genau mit der Map vom BOTW abgleichen.
In all the lakes and rivers, but I didn't really understand at this point how the flooding tool worked with World Painter. You can kind of see me struggling with it because I just didn't get it at the time. This was my first time using World Painter, so I didn't really know what I was doing for most of this part. But gradually I figured out how exactly it worked, and I was able to put in most of the water around the map, but because of how the tool worked, I couldn't add all of it in, and I'd have to go through manually and add some of the water in these lakes. After a while of working in this region, I zoomed out and just realized that all the rivers had filled up because of how the tool works. I worked on the water levels a bit more, but I'm gonna kind of skip past it so that we can get to the other stuff. I then went through and added the sandy shores to mostly the bottom right section of the map, and I tried some stuff with Death Mountain, but it didn't
Ey,
really
wie so
work.
kleine Details direkt das einfach viel besser aussehen
Now,
lassen.
for the most part, the rest of the time I was in World Painter, I was just
Aber die
working
Wüste
out
unten
what
noch, oder?
blocks I wanted to use for Death Mountain and the Gerudo Highlands. I ended up choosing terracotta for both as a bit of a temporary block and we can change it later if need be. And I also turned the Gerudo
Ja.
Desert into, well, an actual desert. And in the end, this is what the finished map looked like.
Oha.
There are definitely some changes that will be made in the future, such as the
Ey, ohne Scheiß, wenn man einfach nur das sehen würde, würde man sich denken, ja Mann, passt. Also ich muss sagen, oben die Hebraberge, da fehlt noch ein bisschen der Schnee. Ey, aber ansonsten, die Schlucht ist vielleicht, also die Hebra-Region ist noch ein bisschen schwierig, glaube ich. Aber ansonsten, holy moly, das ist jetzt schon ziemlich strong.
snow layers in the top left corner. There's just not enough snow there. And I may or may not have really screwed up the lava levels at Death Mountain, but we'll save that for a future episode. Now, let's get into the actual building.
Oh,
Before
damn.
starting on the Great Plateau, there are a few other
Also für alle, die es noch nicht mitbekommen haben, heute soll es vor allem um das große Plateau gehen. Also einmal die Map erstellen, das haben wir jetzt quasi abgeschlossen und jetzt soll das große Plateau
things
gebaut
we
werden.
need to do. Spread across the map are 15 Chica Towers and 120 shrines. So I wanted to build these up now so that I could easily copy and
Oh, das
paste
stelle ich
them
mir
around.
richtig schwer vorzubauen. Diese ganzen leuchtenden Details und so weiter. Ist ja super verschnörkelt und alles ganz rund. Und Minecraft hat's ein bisschen schwierig mit Rundung.
On the map. And since I would be building the towers and the shrines, I figured I might as well build the guardians while I was at it. After all, we would need some decayed guardians to put on the actual Great Plateau. So, first up on the list, the Chica Towers. So, because of the scale that I had chosen for this map, it was kind of hard to
Ey, aber voll smart, ne? der baut das mit Holzzäunen und dadurch bekommst du genau diese löchrige Optik. Boah, voll gut.
Go into much
Das
detail,
funktioniert
and you're gonna
richtig.
see that in a little bit I'm actually gonna even scale down the tower I'm building here. Getting the little platforms that come off the side was pretty challenging, and even now I'm not sure that I really did it that well, but we're gonna leave it as is for now. And then once I changed the scale of the tower, I went back through and evenly spaced out all of the platforms. Each tower has different placements of their little ledges, but I don't know if I'm gonna go so in detail as to change every single one of them. Moving up to the top of the tower, it was pretty fun to try to come up with this design and choose the correct blocks for this, since I couldn't go so in depth with the design.
Vor allem, was ja auch noch wichtig ist, wir bauen ja auch aktuell einen Minecraft-Server, Hübcraft, falls ihr das kennt. Und da greifen wir auf sehr viele Modding-Packs zurück, wodurch wir sehr viel mehr Blöcke zur Verfügung haben. Beziehungsweise ich baue nicht, das macht mein Team. Ganz viel Liebe an euch an der Stelle. Aber er hat ja, glaube ich, nur das ganz klassische Minecraft, ohne jegliche Form von Mods. Das heißt, seine Art und Anzahl der Blöcke, die er verwendet, ist ja super limitiert.
But I like the choice of using deep slate and the terracotta. They fit the colors of the tower pretty nicely. At the top of the tower, there were these little antenna things, which were pretty tricky to get looking good with this scale, but it worked out in the end, I think. And with that, the Chica Tower was finished. For the shrine, I really only had to build one of these because they are all identical, but I would have to build a diagonal one on a 45-degree rotation to fit some of the positions of the shrines.
Okay, er sagt gerade, er muss 2 Versionen der Schreine bauen. Einmal die ganz normale und dann nochmal eine um 45 Grad gedrehte. Aber welche Schreine sind denn in BOTW um 45 Grad geneigt? Alle Schreine stehen doch eben, oder? Okay, da bin ich gespannt, wann er die verwendet. Ich habe gerade keinen Schrein im Kopf, der irgendwie schräg an einem Hang gebaut ist oder so. Die stehen doch alle gerade. Schreibt mir mal bitte in die Kommentare, welcher Schrein im BOTW schräg steht.
There's not much to say about the shrines. You can see I even got the little Chica eye done at the...
Ja, aber ohne Scheiß. Er baut sie in blau, das heißt, sie sind schon aktiviert. Er baut sie nicht in orange. Aber das sieht echt gut aus.
Top there.
Natürlich nicht so detailreich, aber trotzdem. Gefällt mir.
Now for the moment I'm sure most of you guys have been waiting for. It is time to build the Guardians. Okay, so the Guardians were quite a challenge to build up. This first clip you're seeing was 55 minutes of building just to get the first Guardian design down. And you can see I kind of was messing with it a lot with the scale, and I made some pretty atrocious designs, as you probably saw on the right there. For some reason, I had it in my mind that the head needed to be separated from the body somehow, and I kept trying to do that, but once I just kind of put the head directly attached to the body, it worked out. And once I had the base body design, it was time for the legs.
Wie gut das aussieht. Wie er wirklich durch die Holzoptik, da da auch noch so Bretter drin sind, er das voll geil hinbekommt, dieses Verschnörkelte wird dadurch super imitiert.
I decided to use smooth quartz and iron trapdoors.
Oh mein Gott, mit diesen Eisenfalltüren sieht das so gut aus. Richtige Gelenke.
They might be a bit too long, but still, I think the Guardian ended up looking really cool.
Oha, voll geil.
Then I began to make some alternate versions of that Guardian. The first one being the same exact thing, but it's kind of walking or ready to attack. The second one we made was a slightly decayed one. There are some Guardians that are kind of decayed, but not fully.
So ein bisschen heruntergekommen, naja, mit so Erd- und Grasblöcken.
Next up was a fully decayed Guardian, which is no longer functioning, overtaken by nature. These would be the kind of Guardians that we would put on the Great Plateau. And finally, I made another variation of the decayed Guardian that still has some of its legs. And I switched out the decayed Guardian's legs to deep slate to show them blackened and aged.
Stimmt, ja. Dadurch, dass die Beine dunkel sind es halt diese typischen heruntergekommenen, die entweder gar nicht mehr funktionieren, wo man dann immer Wächterteile drin findet, die kann man ja looten, auch wenn man die Teile nicht sieht, oder eben, dass sie auf einen schießen. Geil, ey, voll gut.
Now, with some templates that we would be using throughout the entire build project complete, we were finally ready to move on to the Great Plateau. And this is where things kind of started to get difficult. Now, sitting before you is the Great Plateau, a massive area of land that is elevated off of the ground. This area acts as the tutorial region of the Wild. The first logical thing to do was to paste in the Chica Tower and the shrines that were scattered.
Da hinten ist es gerade der dritte
across the
Schrein und der vierte
plateau.
auch. Ja, alle
But
Schreine
as I
stehen schon.
mentioned, the Great Plateau is elevated off of the ground, and a lot of the surrounding cliffs have man-made walls built into them. These walls were the first thing that I decided to tackle. There was once an entrance to get up onto the plateau, however, at the time of Breath of the Wild, it has been flooded and caved in. Due to where the entrance was located, I actually had to build it diagonally, which is always difficult, and I couldn't get it to look right. So I decided to build it on the regular straight-on axis, whatever you call it, and use World Edit to rotate it 45 degrees.
Ich meine, das ist natürlich noch nicht die finale Version, Guys, was er hier gerade macht. Aber ist das große Plateau nicht deutlich höher? Ich meine, hier ist das große Plateau jetzt gerade, lasst mich lügen, 10, 12 Blöcke hoch. Aber im Originalspiel ist es ja so richtig, richtig hoch. Da bin ich gespannt, ob er das noch höher macht.
But the rotation process never works very smoothly with World Edit, so there were still some gaps I had to fill in and other things that I had to fix up. After placing the entrance into its proper location, I went to work on the top side a little bit more. The only thing I really had to add were these sort of statues or gargoyles on either side of the entrance.
Aber muss das ganze Plateau
The entrance
rundherum
finished,
bauen.
I began to work on the design for the rest of the walls, which thankfully all has the same design. But because of the curvature of the Great Plateau, some of these walls would have to be diagonal like the entrance. I decided to do the same thing for the walls that I did for the entrance. I built it up on the regular axis and then used World Edit to rotate it 45 degrees.
Okay, also er hat immer eine Mod verwendet, um die geraden Mauern zu drehen. Das kann berechnet
And I
werden
also
von
made a
Mods.
third variant which is closer to a 22 degrees rotation.
Ey, aber das sieht voll gut aus, ohne Scheiß.
Finished, I just had to paste them in and the first section of the wall was finished.
Stark, stark.
For the
Das
rest of
sieht
the walls,
wirklich
it
gut
was
aus.
pretty simple. I just had to paste in the designs that I had already made. The only annoying part is that I had to sort of mold the surrounding terrain into the walls, and I would have to fill up some holes later. I'm sure you've already seen that some of the terrain around the walls was cut away awkwardly when I pasted it in, but I would fix all of that later. In some spots, like around the backside of the plateau here, I had to make completely custom terrain to fit where the walls were supposed to go, but thanks to World Edit, it really was not that bad. The only thing left to do now was to ruin the walls. The entirety of the Great Plateau is mostly in ruins, including these walls, so I got to go through and add all sorts of cracked stone brick, cobblestone, leaves.
Jetzt hat
I
er
got to
alles
tear holes in the
aufgebaut,
walls to really make it
nur
look
um es jetzt wieder kaputt zu machen und mit Erde aufzufüllen, weil das sind ja alles keine intakten Mauern mehr, sondern das sind ja alles Ruinen. Pain!
ancient, forgotten, and ruined, which would be a recurring theme throughout this build process. Before we could start building things on the actual top of the Great Plateau, I wanted to finish all of the landscaping. Part of this landscaping was to implement all of the trees around the Great Plateau, but the default Minecraft trees are kind of lame, so I
die sind
decided
wirklich
that
lame.
I would make my own custom trees to spread across the plateau, and the rest of the Breath of the Wild map, of course. Throughout the Great Plateau, there are three main types.
Boah, jetzt bin ich sehr gespannt, wer die Bäume nachbaut. Weil die sind ja schon im Breath of the Wild sehr mager, recht dünne Stämme und nur so Blatt- bzw. Laubkronen nur oben drauf. Da bin ich jetzt sehr gespannt, wie er das
Of
nachbaut.
trees. And for each tree type, I would need a few different trees so that the forests aren't entirely made of the same exact tree. The first I made were the birch trees, which came out the worst in my opinion. Now, I am not that good at making
Okay, er findet
custom
die am
trees,
schlechtesten.
and I'm not that happy with the results of these.
Ja, das Problem ist halt, dass die Stämme nicht cool aussehen. Also in BOTW sind ja, glaube ich, die Stämme meistens nur sehr hell. Und ich glaube, die haben nicht diese typische
So,
Maserung.
in the future, as I get better, I might eventually come back and improve these trees. Next up were the tall spruce trees that would mainly go in the mountainous region of the Great Plateau. In my opinion, these ones came out the best, but that's
die
mostly
Tannen.
because I've actually had some experience making custom spruce trees in
Ja.
the past.
Die sehen geil
Later, I
aus.
would also make snowy variants with some snow layers scattered across the leaves for the ones that would be going in the mountain. Next up were the oak trees, which at first I thought came out very badly, but looking back, they're not as bad as I thought
Doch,
they
die sehen
were.
cool
but
aus. Bloß wie gesagt, ich glaube, das ist ein bisschen zu viel. Obwohl, nee, das sind die Dicken. Das sind die Dicken, die da teilweise in diese Eichen, die in den großen Wäldern stehen. Doch,
they're
die sehen
still not
eigentlich ganz
great.
gut aus,
I
finde
think
ich.
I could have made these trees better, but I was trying to stick to the same style as the ones in Breath of the Wild. They kind of look like lollipops, with all of the leaves centered around the top. which I guess pretty much every tree in existence is like that. It makes sense in my head, okay? Heading back onto the Great Plateau, I was ready to finish up the landscaping and add all of my custom trees. To start, I put in the giant lake
Ist das, was da gerade passiert, macht er das mit World Painter oder mit World Edit?
that sits up in the cold region of the plateau and
Ich
changed
glaube, das
all the
ist auch ein
grass
Mod, mit dem man quasi so malen kann. Also er schwebt und malt das Ganze an, aber wie schnell das einfach
in
geht.
this region to snow blocks. I even let it snow a bit to scatter some snow layers across the whole region before I started to put in my spruce trees.
Geil, jetzt setzt er die Bäume rein. Hammer.
Next, I put in
Ich bin gespannt, ob er auch an die geheime Höhle hinter dem Wasserfall
the
denkt.
birch trees, but really there wasn't that much room to put any. The forest was kind of small, but
Da kommt dann noch, da kommt auch, glaube ich, noch die, also wenn ich das richtig erkenne, dann müsste da, glaube ich, noch
I
irgendwo die
also got
Hütte
to
von
put
dem
in
alten
some of
Mann
the
hinkommen,
regular
oder?
spruce trees along the back. Moving on to
Wie
the
geil
other
das mit
side
diesen
of the
Custom-Bäumen
plateau,
aussieht.
there
Props,
was a
wirklich.
very dense forest that I had to put in place. There were also some lone oak trees spread across the rest of the plateau, which I planted as well.
Bäumen sieht das
And
so
while I
viel
wasn't
belebter aus.
recording, I made these very small trees, almost like bushes that I could spread throughout the forest as well. You might be able to catch a few of them in these wide shots. With the landscaping complete, we could finally begin to build some of the structures scattering the plateau. Following Link's journey as he wakes up, I began with the Shrine of Resurrection, where the entire game starts. And of course, I had to build it on the diagonal, which just made it a little bit more annoying, but in the end, I think I made a pretty good replica of it.
Geil.
I followed the path down the hill towards where you first meet the old man, and put in the old campsite, even making sure to put in the baked apple on the floor.
Hat sogar den Apfel reingelegt.
Further down the path, we come across a ruined building.
Ja. Wobei ist das Lagerfeuer von dem Duden nicht noch ein bisschen mehr unter, okay, ich meine, wir motzen hier auf übel hohem Niveau.
Which is a
Aber ist es nicht noch so ein bisschen mehr überdacht? Sitzt der nicht mehr in so einer Höhle drin? Weil das Lagerfeuer ist ja jetzt doch ziemlich unter freiem Himmel, aber also, bitte nicht zu ernst nehmen.
part of the Temple of Time structure, but I decided to save the rest of that for the end of the episode.
Okay.
I also built the ruined
Er baut den
fountain
Tempel der
with
Zeit
a
am
bit of a
Ende.
staircase that heads down towards the entrance of the plateau.
Krass, Alter, wie man Stück für Stück anfängt, alles zu erkennen.
At the flooded entrance of the plateau, I had to put in some walls along the side, which conveniently happened to be
Genau, das da drüben ist der Magnetschrein. Und auf der anderen Seite ist, glaube ich, ein Bockblendlager.
torn straight from the walls of the plateau itself. But I also got to put in my first ruined guardian, which was pretty cool. I also built up the first bokoblin camp right next to the entrance. These would all be pretty much identical with the same tower designs and the log near the campfire.
Boah, wie cool. Wenn ihr da das Gras wegmacht, wie geil das aussieht. So richtig so abgetreten, als ob die da schon die ganze Zeit lang campen. Voll nice, wie so kleine Details alles ausmachen können.
Heading over towards the birch forest, there were some other ruins scattered alongside some other bokoblin camps. One of these bokoblin camps was a skull camp. Some of these camps that you can find across the Breath of the Wild map are actually stone dens in the shape of giant skulls. And I think I did a pretty good job at replicating the design. It might not look much like a skull, but it definitely looks similar to what it is in Breath.
Doch, ich finde schon, dass das aussieht. Also er sagt dir, es sieht jetzt nicht so aus wie ein Totenkopf, aber er ist zufrieden damit. Ich finde, es hat definitiv Totenkopf-Charakter.
The Wild. Then I finished up the other ruins in this area, including a section of the Great Plateau wall, which is here for some reason. Nearby the Skull Camp is one of the
das ist der Bombenschrein.
4 shrines located on the plateau. This shrine in particular is surrounded with the ruins of some ancient structure, along with some ruined guardians.
Boah, ja, da sind die Guardians. Man muss sagen, jetzt, wenn diese Guardians da drin sitzen, also gerade der direkt mittig unter dem Schrein, würde ich jetzt nicht direkt als Guardian erkennen, muss ich sagen. Aber es kann auch die Perspektive sein. Vielleicht, wenn man dann selber da in der Welt rumläuft, erkennt man es ein bisschen besser. Aber der zum Beispiel nebendran, der rechts neben dem Schrein, den erkennt man schon besser, weil man halt das Auge vorne erkennt.
The last structure on the way to the birch forest is a bridge which goes over a small valley.
Oh
Looking
ja.
back, I think this
Aber die
bridge
ist kaputt, glaube ich, oder? Auf der Brücke haben wir in Kaiser BOTW gegen den Bockblin gekämpft. Ich
was
glaube, die ist
actually
broken.
split in half in the game, which
Ja.
I forgot to do in the Minecraft map.
Sagt er jetzt gerade. Genau
Moving
das hat
on
er
to
jetzt
the
gerade gesagt, dass er es jetzt hier vergessen hat zu halbieren, weil sie eigentlich eingestürzt
Final
ist.
build of this region, the Old Man's Hut. This was a pretty simple build, there wasn't much to it, it was just tricky to get the roof color right, and I ended up having to go with a slightly inaccurate color, and there was also another bokoblin camp nearby.
Cool. Aber ist das Bockpläne-Lager? Ist das nicht eher in einer Schlucht drin?
Apart from the mountainous region of the plateau, the only section we had left to build in was the Lush Forest. I started off with one of the small camps that the old man used to sit at before moving on to the great tree trunk. There's a very large felled tree in this forest, and it looks a little bit wonky with the fallen tree trunk, but it was really the only way I could get this to work. Because, of course, I had to build it diagonally, so it was kind of hard to get the angle
Diagonal bauen ist einfach der Tod für alle Minecraft-Bauer.
Of the fallen trunk right, but in the end it worked out, and later I would go back and add even more moss to it to show that it's really been sitting there a long time.
Sieht schon
Right
stark
next to
aus.
the tree as well is a pretty large bokoblin camp with some ruins scattered in with it. There were also some bone piles in this camp, so I used some skeleton heads, bone blocks, and invisible item frames to scatter these bones around the area. I went through the forest and added a lot more greenery to it because I felt like it should be more lush and vibrant, and as you could see, it turned out pretty amazing looking.
Geil. Ja. Flora und Fauna ist so wichtig, wenn du einfach nur so flache Grasflächen hast, sieht egal in welchem Videospiel, ist immer super schnell richtig nackt aus. Und ist einfach so wichtig, wie in der echten Natur, überall Büsche, höhere Pflanzen, hohe Gräser, etc. hinzupacken. Ist natürlich, glaube ich, auch grafisch aufwendig, weil das natürlich alles ganz viele kleine Videospielelemente sind, die sich alle bewegen. Aber wenn man das einbaut, sieht es einfach so viel belebter aus.
What was left now was the mountainous region of the Great Plateau.
Oh, da kommt auch die große Brücke
Starting
hin.
on this side,
Mit
I
diesem
added
super
in
ätzenden
a felled
Croc.
guardian with a ruined wall next to it, as well as a broken bridge that used to be used to get across the river. Then I backtracked for a moment, going back to build up the entrance gate near where the Temple of Time will be. Just on the inside of this gate, there was more to build. Another ruined bridge with a raft, but I couldn't get the raft to look right. There was also another guardian here with the ruins of a wooden shack. Finally, I felt like the peak of the mountain didn't look right. It wasn't very accurate to what it is in Breath of the Wild, so I decided to edit it a bit. It kind of bulges out a bit and then goes back up to a thin peak, and there's also a little rock formation at the top of it, which is theorized to be the king's grave. One last thing to mention, I know some of you guys might be telling me, oh, but you missed this or you missed that. There was a lot of...
Er sagt gerade, ja, es gibt Zuschauer, die sagen, ja, du hast das vergessen, du hast das vergessen. Ja, genau so einer bin ich.
Building, which I didn't show you guys due to time restraints with this video. You could see in this clip, I built up some other camps and stuff along this region of the Great Plateau. I really tried to do a thorough job looking through the Great Plateau and making sure I got everything, and I think I did. But of course, there's still one main structure we have to build up. The Temple of Time. So, there were still some ruins in...
sagt, wir müssen den Temple of Time bauen. Und welche Musik fügt er ein? Den Song of Storms. Warum denn jetzt nicht die Temple of Time Musik, Bro?
This area of the map leading up towards the Temple of Time. But there was nothing that special about them. They were pretty similar to each other, so I'm gonna go past these pretty quickly and get straight on to the actual temple.
Oh, jetzt bin ich gespannt.
It took 3 attempts for me to get the entrance tower done right. The first one was not that bad, the second one was pretty bad, but I used this second design as a template to build the final one. I went into so much more detail with this final one, which is what really made it better than the others, and it still kept pretty accurate to the original design. Just getting this middle tower done on its own took so long. I was really struggling with this one.
Ey, so einen großen Respekt an diesen Typen, ne? Wie viel Zeit der sich nimmt.
Moving on, there are 2 smaller towers on either side of the main one, which are kind of just like mini replicas of the middle one, with a bit of a connecting thingy between the 2 of them.
Dach nennt man sowas, Bruder. Dach.
After finishing up the mini tower design, I moved back to the main one to finish the top of it. The pointed peak was something that was really annoying to get.
Fun Fact, hat jetzt nichts mit dem Temple of Time zu tun, aber ich habe ja hier ein riesiges Lego Hogwarts neben mir stehen. Und tatsächlich einige Türme von Hogwarts haben ganz große Ähnlichkeiten mit dem Turm hier vom Temple of Time.
Its square base, but it worked out in the end.
Das sieht sehr ähnlich aus.
I replicated a smaller one to the other tower before pasting it to the other side.
Stimmt, den kann er einfach rüber copy-pasten. Nice.
Moving back along to the bulk of the temple, this wall design was pretty simple and I could copy paste it along the whole thing. And
Schräglöcher sehen so geil aus. Boah! Ich meine, es ist einfach nur ein riesiges Dach, was schräg nach oben geht mit Stufen, aber kaum ist es da, sieht es so mächtig aus.
These strips of andesite to break up the deep slate roof, which isn't really accurate to the design, but I feel it's necessary to make it look good. The back of the temple was pretty basic too, with a bit of a thing that comes out to make room for the goddess statue inside.
Geil, mit so einer kleinen Kuppe hinten, genau, wo dann die Statue von der Göttin von Hylia drin ist.
And I was even able to implement a worn down golden Triforce.
Stark.
But as you all know, just like the rest of the Great Plateau, the Temple of Time is in ruins. The left tower was completely torn down and I added a gaping hole in the side of the temple.
Jetzt hat er den kompletten Turm aufgebaut, nur um ihn dann wieder zu 95% abzureißen. Bro!
Which honestly makes the structure look very unsupported. Moving on to the interior, I tidied up the front wall a little bit, still making it ruined, but making it look like there was actually once a wall there. I then finished up the other walls with the same pillar design as the exterior, and put in a roof design which is accurate to the actual game. Along the backside, there's a bit of a step up with almost little green garden areas on either side, and in the middle is the goddess statue.
Yeah.
I thought the goddess statue would be very hard to build on this scale, but it actually just kind of worked out on my first try. And I'm actually very, very pleased with how accurate the statue
das sieht richtig gut aus.
Moving back outside, I finished up the walls and the platform holding up the temple, and this is when it becomes apparent that the Temple of Time is way too big for this scale.
Scheiße.
Now for the final touches.
Okay, aber er hat gerade gesagt, der Temple of Time ist viel zu groß für die Skalierung, die er für die Map genutzt hat. Ich hatte jetzt schon Angst, dass wieder alles abreißt, aber er hat stehen lassen.
And mossy stone bricks, I put in a bunch of jungle leaves as well to show its overgrown nature, and on the inside added a bunch of dangling vines. And with that, the Great Plateau was finished.
Geil. Oh mein Gott, wie stark das aussieht. Ey, und wir haben alles gesehen, wie es aufgebaut wurde. Was eine geile Reise. Stimmt, da kriegt man Croc, wenn man da in die Seerosen reinhüpft. Wie geil. Da ist sogar die Truhe. Da ist sogar die Truhe an der Seite. Boah, mit der Musik wirkt das nochmal viel besser. Ja, der Tempelanteil ist wirklich ein bisschen zu groß, aber scheiß drauf, sieht fett aus. Ja, da flüchtet man immer vor Bockblins, wenn man in diesen Teich hüpft. Sogar Fleisch hingelegt. Boah, ist das beeindruckend. Ist das beeindruckend. Ich bin so fasziniert. Ich bin so fucking fasziniert. Ich bin gespannt, ob jetzt noch den... Der hat jetzt das Wasser nicht hingebaut, ne? Aber wo ist denn der Schrein? Das ist ja das Grab des Königs, also sagen Theorien. Hat er jetzt wirklich den See hier oben vergessen? Da ist sogar eine Truhe drin.
And here is the finished.
Obwohl, nee. Ihr seht es, er war auf diesem Turm hier auf diesem Berg hier in der Mitte. Aber er war jetzt nicht da drüben bei dem Schrein. Und es könnte sein, dass... Da ist es so ein bisschen flacher neben dem Schrein. Vielleicht hat er da meinen kleinen See noch hingebaut. Ich hoffe, den See gibt's. Oder den Teich, den Tümpel.
So excited to keep going with this project. And for the future of this project, I don't really know what we're doing next episode. I just know that next episode is happening. I really want to do Hyrule Castle, but I feel like that should be saved for more of a climactic finish to the whole project. So if there's something you really want to see me build, comment it down below and I might do it in the next episode. But one thing is for sure, we'll get to it eventually. But oh my god, this video has been going on way too long. I've stayed up till 4 AM editing and uploading this, so we gotta end this episode. So thank you all for watching this episode. If you guys don't want to miss the series, then I recommend you subscribe, because of course I would. I have no guarantees for when part 2 is gonna come out, it's just whenever I finish it. So, I'll see you guys then.
Geil. Hammer. Hammer. Richtig, richtig stark. Natürlich lasst wieder einen Daumen nach oben da. Und ein Abonnement. Ja, ich hoffe, euch hat das Ganze auch gefallen. Wie gesagt, mal was Neues. Kein Speedrun. Schreibt mal eure ehrliche Meinung unten in die Kommentare. Sollen wir in Zukunft auch auf andere Videos reagieren? Wenn ich euch jetzt noch was empfehlen darf, Freunde, hier ist noch der letzte Reaction Saturday, als wir auf Mario Odyssey, den ganz neuen Weltrekord, reagiert haben, der eine ultra krasse Zeit gebrochen hat. Solltet ihr gesehen haben. Und danke an meine ganzen Kanalmember. Bis zu einem neuen Video.